Welcome to week 2 of our online classes. I hope you're all hanging in there and finding some ways to de-stress as you practice social distancing. Today we're going to talk about P3, Sample 2, animal testing, to highlight some more strategies that you can implement in your own Project 3. We'll start talking about this sample essay by looking at the introduction. Here, the writer makes some of the really good moves that we saw in the previous sample essay from last week. The first thing that he does is identify the audience. He decided to argue to the National Association for Biomedical Research, but rather than speaking to the entire organization, he decided to speak directly to the chair, Jeffrey Kordauer. You'll see this highlighted in purple. Speaking directly to Kordauer allowed this writer to really focus the organization and emphasize on values and beliefs to make his argument. This focus might be something that you want to do in your Project 3. I made some comments specifically about focus and audience on last Monday's discussion board for each of you, so make sure that you check out the feedback that I posted there as you're starting to draft your introductory paragraphs. The second move that our writer makes is different than the sample essay from last week. Look at the section I underlined in green. Here, the writer acknowledges that he knows about the organization by pulling in information directly from the mission statement. He says, your mission statement claims that the National Association of Biomedical Research provides the unified voice for the scientific community on legislative and regulatory matters affecting laboratory animal research. The NABR uses animals to develop new biomedical devices and research to better both human and animal lives. Because you're trying to change someone's mind, it's important that you demonstrate you know about the work that they do and what their argument is. Here, the writer is acknowledging that he's done his research. This is definitely something that you want to be doing in your introductory paragraphs. The writer then goes on to make his argument. What he does here is what I'm calling a three-step power move. So first, he recognizes that he agrees. He says that developing new medical devices and research are important. This is good because he's acknowledged where he and his audience have a similar argument. The second part of the argument indicates where they disagree. He says, however, I believe that animals should not be treated as research tools and not be tested on. The third and final move that the writer makes is to state what he thinks the role of the NABR should be. He says, as leaders in the field of animal research, it is up to you to determine policies. The final statement here builds into his overall argument that the NABR needs to change their policies. I circled the word change because it clearly indicates that the writer is looking to propose a solution. Overall, this writer does an excellent job setting up his argument to make an argument of proposal, which hopefully you saw as you were reading the rest of the essay for today. Here I've pulled out the final sentence of the introduction. It says, the issue of animal testing revolves around the lack of success, potential alternative methods, financial cost, environmental harm, and question if animal testing is ethical. This works really nicely to provide an organization for the paper, and as you saw, the writer follows this as the structure throughout their paper. Remember when we talked about thesis statements for Project 2? This is another example of what we call a thesis-driven structure. So just like you were doing in Project 2, you want to establish some kind of structure in your introductory paragraph because having this structure can really help set up your argument. I also wanted to point out that the writer does an excellent job addressing his audience's beliefs and values. So the writer figured out this structure based off of the work that he did for his stakeholder profiles. He identified success as an overall value and also noted from reading various statements from Kordauer and Kordauer's research that the chair of this organization was financially driven. He did care about the environment and he was involved in ethical decision making in biomedical research. I know you all aren't making arguments of proposal, but regardless of the type of argument you're making for P3, you need to support your argument in a way that acknowledges what your audience values and use that to try to change their mind. So make sure that you're using all of the work that you did in putting your stakeholder profile together as you start to draft your introductory paragraphs. One last thing I want to emphasize here is language use. So you're going to look at language later this week when you read about style and arguments, but I wanted to point out that a common error that occurs in Project 3 is using language that your audience doesn't know. I think that I mentioned this when we unpacked the prompt, but I wanted to point out that neither of the sample essays actually use the word stasis in them. This is a really important thing to notice because your audience might not know what these different forms of argument are. So we want to think about stasis theory as our insider knowledge that we're using to make our argument and to determine how to make better arguments, but we don't actually want to use the word stasis or stasis theory in our Project 3s. So make sure that you keep this in mind as you're starting to draft. Today we looked at another P3 sample essay to help identify some of the writing techniques you can use in your Project 3. The first piece of homework you need to complete for Wednesday is the Wednesday 4-1 discussion. We've read 2 P3 student samples. In this discussion, I want you to write a post that compares the two. Make sure that you answer the following questions. What different writing techniques do the writers use? And which essay do you like better and why? Give specific examples from the essay to explain why you like that one better. It can be because you think they have stronger research. It could be because they have better examples of something. Whatever the reason is, just make sure that you provide some evidence to support why you like that paper better. Post your response before our regular class time. Then, after you post your response, read through the other responses. Use the like button to indicate which of your peers you agree with. You can find these instructions on the Wednesday 4-1 discussion board. After you complete Wednesday's discussion, you need to work on your P3 introductory paragraphs. Model your introductory paragraph off of the sample essays we've read. Submit your intro and works cited before our normal class time. While you may find that you're not using sources in your introduction, I want you to put any sources you think you'll use in P3 on your works cited. This way, you can get some feedback on your citations and work on fixing them before the 50% draft is due. Once you submit your introduction and works cited, you'll be assigned one introduction and works cited to peer review. We're doing peer review the same way that we've been doing it all semester. So you all know how to access that on Canvas, but I have some reminder notes that I'll post for Wednesday. Make sure that you go to the assignment Wednesday 4-1, Project 3, Introductory Paragraph, and Works Cited plus Peer Review to complete the peer review activity. The activity is posted on the assignment, but it's also posted on our Canvas homepage so that you can open it in 2 separate screens while you're completing the peer review activity. The peer reviews need to be completed by 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday. Before you complete the peer review, you should read Chapter 28, Style and Arguments, pages 541 to 565 from the Engaged Citizen. We aren't going to have a discussion post about this reading, but you'll need to have it read to provide specific feedback for the intro paragraph peer review because you're going to use some of those concepts from the chapter in your peer review responses. I also wanted to say that I know we've had a few readings from the textbook so far, and I wanted to make sure that you know that if you don't have access to your textbook, you should let me know because I can help you request digital access to copies that are available through the library. So if you don't have your book because maybe you left it in your dorm or you were sharing with someone, please send me an email so I can help you get access to that for the rest of the semester. Don't forget that I have digital office hours on Mondays and Wednesdays, and I'd really love to chat with you about your writing or answer any other questions about our online class that you might have at this time.